Okay, welcome everyone to a special two-part episode of Free Life Agents. This is going to be part one. And before I bring on my guest today, I really want to quickly introduce him just a little bit and list off some of his achievements. So if you didn't know, today we're going to be talking about business mindset, overcoming adversity, especially with the shifting market. I think it's a very relevant topic. But without further ado, I want to quickly introduce my guest here. His name is Connor Steinbrook. You might have seen him on YouTube. His channel is called Investor Army. He's built it from the ground up. Now it is the biggest residential real estate investing channel in all of Texas, with now 40,000 subscribers and growing. And he's going to get ready to launch another channel really soon here. But what he's known for is real estate investing, building YouTube channels, and then also now he is the founder of the Wolfpack organization here at eXp Realty with over 2,000 agents in almost all 50 states in the U.S. and a pretty big global presence as well in probably 20 different countries, close to 20 different countries going to be here soon. But, he is, I'm very grateful that he is also a personal friend and a personal mentor of mine. But I mean, without further ado, I really want to bring on my guest today, Connor Steinbrook. Connor, thanks so much for doing this.
Hey, what's going on, buddy? Hey, what's going on, everybody? Yeah, I appreciate all the good words. I can sit here and listen to that all day. Just keep going, bro. You want to do that the whole time? Just kidding. No, but I'm excited for you to see you having such great success. Starting out, at such a young age is inspirational, not just for me, but for everybody that should know what you're doing. So you've got a great career ahead of you, because I was essentially broke $100,000 debt like almost a decade later than you in your life. Well, maybe not that long, but I was basically my point is you got a good jump start on where like most of us are when we started our businesses, which is usually later in life, later in 20s, 30s, and 40s. So you got a really good runway ahead of you. So I'm excited to see what you do throughout your career. But let's talk about whatever I can do to help some of your audience here on some of the stuff that's happening here, because I did have a background which we might not go too much into here, where I did have a lot of adversity and I did go into debt and I had to move back home with my parents, and it was brutal. And the biggest issue for me was correcting my fear, my limiting beliefs, my lack of self-esteem and my mindset. And it was a big hurdle for me because I really just didn't have a good relationship with myself. And I didn't believe that I had a great future. And it was a very tough time for me. And I had to go through self-development and went through a long multi-year process of turning my life around through an educational kind of journey of self-development and following the right people and doing the right things. And so I've been able to kind of crack the code on how to get outside of these limiting beliefs and negative mindsets that can probably help some of you on here today.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's important. And well, thank you again for believing in me. But no, I think it is important that we kind of go into your background a little bit. I think it was really relevant for me when we first started talking as well. Just knowing what the things that you've overcome, and that's why a lot of the different things you're teaching us you're teaching me has been very relevant to myself. It's because I know you have the experience. So I mean, if you don't mind, just kind of going into your background, how you got started, being a very elite at a different industry, and then how you kind of had a fall and then came back even better than you did before.
Yeah, I mean, so the first thing is if you guys are starting out in entrepreneurship here, your story is very important. So a story gives others the ability to see themselves within your story, and they can find themselves resonating with a point of their journey where you were at, usually at the part of the movie when your life falls apart, or where they're trying to figure out how to build a business or something like that. They can see themselves in that rocky moment or that comeback story, and it motivates them a lot of times if you do have that story, because they say, if he can do it, I can do it. If she can do it, I can do it, right? They see themselves in you. So let me kind of tell you my story, and this will make sense, maybe how it can impact you and resonate with you and how it can motivate you. So, it wasn't fun going through, but looking back now, I'm glad that I did, because it led me to become who I am today. So I had a weird background. I went off to college when I was Kobe's age, and I put $20 in a poker site. And what had happened was technology had infused into brick and mortar, which is happening all around the world, including our brokerage, right? And this is why everything's accelerating. Opportunities are increasing, because traditionally, to play on our live poker, very time consuming to move the cards and the chips around the table. You could play a few hundred hands a day if you played all day. When technology was introduced, you could play a few hundred hands on one table, literally in a few hours, and now you can play multiple tables at a time. So it accelerated the learning curve because of the hand volume that we could play. And so in my freshman dorm as a young kid, I played more hands in 1 year than any living poker player that's a professional poker player for decades had ever been able to play, because of the time element to it, if that makes sense. So you started seeing kids take off, and there was this big online poker boom. Before I knew it, I was printing money out of my dorm room essentially, and I was making more money than I would have graduating college, working a full-time job, part-time playing poker fun, right? So what would you do if you were a kid, right? Seems a lot better to go off and play cards and have fun with your friends than it does to go sit in an office and work a corporate job. So for 8 years, I did that professionally. So I graduated college, I got my degree. And to be honest, at the time, I thought I was gonna play poker forever. And I was at the peak of my career. Everything was going great. I was at the highest earning years of my life, essentially where I was at with my career, and it was taken from me. What happened was I woke up on April 15, 2011. It was called Black Friday. If you look on the internet, it was a regulation issue that our US Department of Justice seized and shut down these big online poker sites, Full Tilt Poker and Poker Stars. And there's still a lot of confusion of exactly what happened. But ultimately, when governments can't regulate things, what do? They either destroy it or figure out how to regulate and get their fingers in it to take as much money out of it as they can. And since these websites, most were hosted on offshore islands and something to do with like the Alderney Gaming Commission or something, they didn't have the ability to really regulate them the way they wanted. So they shut them down essentially. And overnight, just like that, I had a printing machine, one income stream that was an incredible income stream, a great identity to be excited to be a world-class poker player on the top in the world, and it just disappeared overnight. And it wasn't just my life, it wasn't just my identity, it was everybody around me. So imagine if you're in football and you're in the NFL just disappeared tomorrow. Or imagine if in real estate, we all had to turn on real estate licenses and all our properties and our rental properties, and the real estate industry just ended overnight for everybody simultaneously. That's exactly what happened. And so it's a very tough time for me. I made a lot of bad mistakes, and I learned quickly about how emotions can cause you to make bad mistakes. So I gambled off a bunch of money on blackjack and craps and made a bunch of bad decisions. And before I knew it, it happened just like this. I was basically moving back home with my parents, almost broke, because I didn't know what I was going to do. And my mindset was, let me stay at home just for a little bit, kind of catch my breath, and hopefully these websites will come back the way that they would, or the way that they were. And it never happened. And after 2 years, I basically played poor me, blamed God, blamed the government, blamed poker sites, blamed anybody and everybody but myself for things that happened. And I got to a point where I was running out of money, had no way of creating an income, and I was panicked, right? And I didn't know what to do. And I got really depressed, as you can imagine. And I was fighting off negative thoughts, suicidal thoughts. Like, it was a tough time for me. So if you're at that moment right now, what I want you to understand is, like, for me, it was the uncertainty of my future, thinking, maybe my future's never going to be better than it is right now. Is this the best life it's ever going to be? And I had all these doubts, right? And I got caught into this mental trap that I couldn't get out of. I couldn't see the light at any end of the tunnel. Now, in hindsight, looking back, I can clearly tell you that's not the case. So if you guys are in a very tough point right now, you need to understand, no storm lasts forever. You can't see the light yet. Just start moving in one direction. The pain and suffering that you feel today will pass. It will go by. Just like if you're sick, once that sickness is done, it goes away, right? You don't remember it. So stay positive in the spot, but start working towards moving forward. What happened for me to get out of it was I stumbled across these old black and white recordings of what's called, or Napoleon Hill's old 17 Principles of Success, right? The original talking points that led to his famous book called Think and Grow Rich. And I stumbled across these on the internet, and it resonated with me for some reason. I went down the rabbit hole on Napoleon Hill. And then I read Think and Grow Rich. And then I started going down reading Outwitting the Devil and all those different books that led me to go down this heavy self-development push, because what it allowed me to realize was I was not a victim of my circumstances, that I was the controller of my future from the thoughts that I create inside my mind. And at this moment, I'd always believed that it was external circumstances that dictate my future. Government, who's the president, what's happening in the marketplace, right? Think about how many people are scared about this recession coming. It's not going to affect you unless you let it affect you, right? So this was a very tough time for me, where I was trying to figure out, what was going on in my life. And, and I was reading these books, and it inspired me enough to get back on the horse, I guess you could say. So if you're at a moment right now where you've lost inspiration and you're terrified and you feel no hope for the future, go check out these books, start following people like Bob Proctor, Earl Nightingale, Les Brown, John Maxwell, who else? All sorts of them. Zig Ziglar. These are all individuals, Brian Tracy. These are all people that I started following that gave me my escape out of where I was at, because it allowed me to realize that I create my future by my thoughts, right? And so I got just enough courage, because it's all the law of attraction, all stuff can get you that way in the beginning. And I went out there and I started going really quick on things, and I made a bunch of mistakes. And I decided I wanted to go into real estate investing, and because I wanted to build residual income. So I started looking at different industries. And what happened was it did not go well. I found every criminal in my marketplace, and I put up a whole bunch of money for education. I made a bunch of marketing mistakes. And before I knew it, I was $10,000 or almost $100,000 in debt. I'd been in business for 6 months. I had worked all day, every day, and I hadn't closed the deal. And now you can even imagine how much even more chaotic my life was inside my mind that I was living in, right? And this is a very pivotal moment for me in my career, because the easy thing to do at this moment would be to file bankruptcy, walk away and push my problems off, right? And do what most people do. And I hope if you're in this moment, listen to my story here, because I chose to go opposite that. I chose to respect myself, my parents, and my country. And I didn't just push my problems off on everybody else. I said, I'm going to fight the darkness basically head to head. And I'm not going to file bankruptcy. I'm going to work as hard as I can to get out of this naturally. Instead of doing that, I picked up a broom and swept floors for minimum wage. And I actually got a job working at Academy Sports and Outdoors, believe it or not. And I'd work on my business 12, 16 hours a day. And then at night, I'd go sweep floors and stock shelves for my 18-year-old boss that wasn't college educated, that laughed every time he threw a broom in my hand and said, sweep the floor up, because he knew that I'd gone from very successful world-class poker player to now sweeping floors at Academy, right? So he thought it was funny. So I'm trying to, figure out my problems in life. And this is when I came across social media and YouTube. And so what happened was I ran out of money. And I started researching ways to generate leads with time. So if you don't have money, you have resourcefulness, even though you don't have resources, right? So you can create anything with your time. So time strategies, money strategies. So I was starting to look for things I could do with my time. And I came across search engine optimization and keyword tools. And I started researching and building websites. Kobe, you're doing the same thing, similar with blogging and stuff like that. So I went down that process. Google had just acquired YouTube, and I started linking private YouTube channels to my websites before anybody was doing this. And it helped the algorithms push up, and I ranked #1 for some of the biggest keywords for house buying in Dallas. We buy houses, sell my house stats for most of the biggest cities. And within a year, I went from 100 grand debt to closing in 1 week. I closed $100,000 worth of wholesale deals, and I did almost 40 deals that first year. And I got my life back in order. And then I started teaching people how to do what I was doing on YouTube. And then I went on and built some successful businesses around behind the scenes, and then EXP along the way. But I know that's kind of a long story, but to kind of get to the teaching moments here is that you can have massive success and lose it, right? Whether it's your mistake or something that happened to you outside yourself. The reason why you need to have this awareness here is you need to have more than one income stream, right? Because if you have one like I did, what's going to happen is you're going to end up in the spot that I did. It's either going to go away, or it's going to go away at the frequency of which you were making it, meaning you're just not making as much as what you're doing. So that's when I learned this lesson. I need to have multiple streams of income. The next lesson I learned is I can't do everything on my own. I need to have duplication. I need people inside my life. I need multiple rental properties, multiple videos, multiple employees, multiple agents in a team, because I was doing everything on my own. And this was the biggest problem, is that if I got sick, tired, emotionally worn out, that it affected me, right? And then I also wanted this is also when I realized I had no equity ownership in anything. So I said, I'm not going to do anything unless I'm an equity owner in it. So because equity creates wealth and avoids time to grow it. And the last thing is I said, I want my time freedom, because I didn't want to get tied into an industry like poker before, where I was stuck trading my time for checks. Essentially, I wanted a residual side. And that's when I realized I wanted to go into real estate. But I know it's kind of a long story here, but you can see how you can be in a different industry and have no skill sets in a new industry and come over to a new industry. But just because of the power of your thinking, the belief system that you have, and staying with it, you can transition to a different industry. And I want to point that out because I know a lot of you just lost your career. You just lost your job. Because of the pandemic and what we're dealing with right now. And what I want you to understand is that you can be someone in the future that you're not today. Just like you can build your body, you can build your mind. And it's through self-development. And you can go into any industry if you choose to and be at the top of that industry if you want to, and you believe you can, and you do the necessary things to do so, no matter where you came from or where you're starting from. And this is where I think a lot of people just think they're a victim of the circumstances of the world, where they don't have control to change their future. And they may be 30, 40 years old and given up on all their big goals and dreams that they had when they were a child. And I urge people to not do this, because my story, you should see in there that you can fall from grace, have no skill sets in the industry, and come back, but it's all through self-development. And then we can now, Kobe, if you want to talk about thinking and fear and all this stuff, but that's kind of the path that led me down. And I tell my story, and I've helped a lot of people follow the same path and get into self-development. And now they're multimillionaires and have great lives. And it's worked for me, worked well for a lot of my partners, and will continue to work. So if you want to do the same thing that we did and have that life, do what we did, which is heavy self-education, self-development.
Yeah. So Connor, I mean, that was a really really good story that you told about yourself and how you came back from a very low point in your life. And I want to slow down and just kind of go back and dig more into how you actually stumbled across that inflection point, or that change in your mindset, where you said you actually stumbled across Napoleon Hill and success strategies and building mindset, and why that all matters. So I really want to kind of just get into, do you just come across something in your basement, or how did you come across that?
Yeah, and like, unfortunately, it's not really a positive kind of like, answer here, but this is really what happened. So like I was kind of at that lost moment, right? And I was dealing with those suicidal thoughts. And I talk about this more and more as, the recession and inflation's hit. And I start to see this pop up in people around me that I know. And I want people to understand that this is not something that lasts. It's a transitionary window. It goes away, but it's kind of, you don't know that when you're in that fire or in that storm, right? And I didn't realize what was going on to me because I'd always been a happy person and I always had a great life, and I never really had depression for the most part, more than like what most people would have. But I was really struggling at this time, as you can imagine. I lost my identity for 10 years almost. I was like a high stakes poker player, and now I'm no longer not. The industry I was gone. All my friends are gone, and it was just a very tough time. And so literally, I was trying to figure out how to deal with my mental issues that I was struggling with. And I went on the internet and basically was like, how do I stop or fight this? How do I fight these thoughts? And basically, the first thing that popped up was one of the original recordings that Napoleon had done, and his black and white recordings from his success principles, right? And I just stumbled across it, and something resonated with me with his message because he was no longer living. I don't know why, but because he was already passed away, and this was from a generation past, and the things that he was saying resonated to what creates success today, and also in the past before. What I realized was what he's talking about is not generational. It transcends generations. And many things that we learn now, as far as what we're studying, is on things that work today, right? Funnels, social media, certain things like that, right? But what Napoleon is talking about was overall life principles, meaning the things that people do to become successful that have nothing to do with time, meaning if they worked 1,000 years ago, they're going to work 1,000 years from now in the future. And that really hit hard. And I started to go down the story, and I found out, that the story of him, interviewing Andrew Carnegie and basically building that relationship and having the relationships with all these top industrial leaders and the big entrepreneurs of the world. And it just kind of led me down this, path of progression. So just like when you haven't worked out in a while, it's easy to create gains, right? And you can see your body change quickly. So if like you let yourself go and you put on 100 pounds, well, guess what? When you start working out, it's a lot easier to take off 10 pounds than it is if you've been working out for 2 years and don't have that much to lose. And so I think that I've been so neglecting my mindset and neglecting, feeding my mind in any way. And I've been so neglected from the world, I guess you could say, on like the right information I needed. Once I came across what I knew was right, it felt right inside. And I just started consuming the information. And so I was one that didn't study a lot in college and in high school, didn't read books, didn't care about the education. But when it came to my self-education and what I needed to do to build myself and build a business, I became addicted to self-development, which happens to people commonly, right? And it was the progression of going through all the information and applying it into my life and seeing results of it that kept making me go back and finding new mentors and new people to follow. And then I started realizing that there's this whole world that people live in, which is the ability of improving yourself, the chase for excellence, right? Physically, spiritually, mentally, relationship wise, to be the best we can be. Unfortunately, what happened to the world? It's like people want to just try to participate and try to float through the world and not try to be good, not try to care about their future, not try to care about, their family or their country or anything like this. And I think it's the wrong direction for the world to go. This is not a participation event, it's a competition. And if you don't understand that, you're going to get crushed, because if you don't know you're playing a game against people that are playing it at a high level, how's that going to end up for you? So I think right now what people need to understand is your future is dictated by your chase for being excellent in every area of your life. If you want an exceptional life and an excellent life, you need to do things in a way that you're treating each part of your life as not a hobby, but as a serious profession and being excellent at it. So you should be breaking down each area of your life and having a goal to be the best you can be in everything you can. And that pursuit of being the best you can be leads you to the results that you've always wanted, which are those goals and dreams that you had as a little child that God put into your mind that you always wanted, that you can now have in the future, that you forgot you could have because you're telling yourself that you can't do it. But I want to tell you that you can, because I know you can, because if I could do it when I was spiritually bankrupt, emotionally bankrupt, physically bankrupt, and every single way I was bankrupt, if I can turn my life around and become me now, which you guys see me now, you wouldn't even recognize me a decade ago. You wouldn't even have known this person, right? And I want you to recreate your future you as who you want that person to be, because you can create the exact person you want to become. But the first step is being aware that you can do that through your thought processes. And we'll talk maybe about fear and faith here. And I'll give them some analogies, kind of like our shareholder speech, on how important thinking is on how it actually creates results. And I'll give you examples of how this can be done, if you want to do that, Kobe.
Right. Yeah. Let's dig into that, because that's something that we talked about a lot, just privately in the past, and that's where you kind of got me on that path as well. Well, first of all, just that's a very inspiring story, and thanks for sharing.
But
But it is, I mean, it is kind of like what you said, keeping your dreams as a kid, and kids have the most faith, and then as we grow older, the world kind of comes down on us and fear comes in. So yeah, so for the people listening, if you didn't know, Connor was actually asked to speak at our big EXP Realty shareholders event. That's how inspiring his story is, and he really went into this topic as well. So if you don't mind, just kind of go into that, digging into the fear versus faith and the different analogies that you shared as well.
yeah, so there's a lot of things that you guys are going to come across that seem cliche in the world, and especially in business. Goal setting, right? And communication sales, controlling conversations with questions and not making statements, or thinking correctly. These are all things that people hear are positive thinking, right? They hear this all the time and they're like, good, I got it, right? But what they don't understand is they don't have it. They're not applying it. So I can tell you how to hit a golf ball. Can I hit a golf ball? I can tell you how to shoot a basketball. I can go shoot a basketball, but do I really fundamentally understand this where I'm applying this into the world where it's actually creating results using the tool as it should be? So goal setting is one of these things that people hear all the time, but they never do it. They don't have visual goals, written goals, audio goals. They don't touch their goals, right? They don't do these things. They know they should, and they may have a goal in their mind. It's a dream. It's not a goal on paper, right? So making the comparison here. So thinking is one of these things that people really don't understand. It's this most important thing that we do, because a thought creates the emotion in our body. The emotion in our body creates our attitude, meaning how we feel. If we feel bad in our body, do we have a good attitude? Versus if we feel great in our body, do we have a great attitude? Now, if you have a great attitude versus a bad attitude, how does this relate to if people want to be in business opportunities with you, or date you, or be around you at family Christmas parties, right? So the most important thing is our attitude dictates the attitude that the world gives to us. It creates our environment, meaning if we have a poor attitude, we're going to be poor, meaning have no money, and our friends are not going to be great friends. They're going to be unethical people with lacking of integrity, just like us. And it's going to create a poor lifestyle for ourselves. But if we have a great attitude, people want to be around us. They want to come to the energy that brings positivity to them, right? So this is why it's so important. So let's take a look at like what's called a polarity, right? So the law of polarity basically states that there can't be one without the other. It means there's an opposite to everything. Positive, negative, left and right, up and down, hot and cold, moon and sun. Everything has opposite to it. And one of these is as a fear and faith polarity. So we're not talking about religious faith in this example. We're talking about the faith of an investment, meaning you took a risk. Did the desired outcome come about? So if you look at this on like a 50-50 opposite bipolar side of things, right? Faith is over here. Fear is over here. The first thing that they have in common is they're not real. They're both future expectations of an outcome that we want or don't want to happen. The risk is in the middle, meaning do we pull the trigger? Do we spend money on marketing? Do we start a business? Do we ask the girl out? So faith is on one side, fear is on the other side. If the risk is too high in your mind, you will procrastinate, you won't take action, meaning if you're scared the girl's going to say no, you're not going to go ask her out, right? Or if you're scared that starting a business isn't going to work out, you're not going to do it. But if the faith is high enough, it'll push you past the risk. So here's the thing that you understand. The thoughts that you think in your mind trigger the emotions in your body, but it has nothing to do with reality. So for example, what if I called Kobe right now in this example I gave at the shareholder speech and said, unfortunately, Kobe, your mother's passed away. She was in a car wreck. You need to come down to the here and identify the body. As horrible as that sounds. Now, he doesn't know that it's not real at the time. He thinks I'm a police officer calling him, right? Guess what's going to happen? He's going to emotionally involve himself in the thought, right? The thought came in, mother's dead. Emotional involvement, breaking down, crying. Actual physical involvement in the body, reacting, right? Well, guess what happens? If I call him back and say, actually, I had the wrong number, your mother's fine. Okay, so she was never dead. But the reaction in his body was as if she was, based off information or a thought. So what this should tell you guys is how important your thinking is. Your thinking, if it's accurate or inaccurate, has no relationship to what it does as far as your emotional state. And most of you are driving yourself freaking nuts all the time because you're believing things in the world that are not actually real. And what a lot of people do is, Kobe, is they use what's called confirmation bias, which is they take information that's spotty in the world, and to confirm their own belief in the world, they're going to have a bias towards their own belief system. So they're going to take limited information on the news or from something, and they're going to create a narrative around it to confirm their own story, if that makes sense, right? So it's so important to understand that we can create our own future with our thoughts, but if our thoughts are inaccurate, it's creating a wrong emotion in our body. And if we feel bad in our body, it creates the wrong attitude, and a wrong attitude either destroys opportunities around us or the right opportunity creates opportunities around us. So the point is, in this example, guys, is you don't know if she's dead or not. It doesn't matter, but your emotional involvement came from a thought. Now think about that, right? And so when you're fearing something, fearing the market crash, fearing the recession, What are you fearing? A negative outcome that you don't want to have happen, but it hasn't happened yet. So there's nothing to truly fear yet, because what if nothing bad happens? What if we actually get out of this, like the pandemic? People thought it was going to end everything, and then it took off, and people's 401ks took off, and all this stuff happened, right? So the point is, don't emotionally involve yourself in thoughts unless the thought is accurate. So when you have information come in, it needs to be factual. It needs to be proven. You need to have a way to prove this is real, because if it's an opinion, don't let yourself get emotionally involved in opinion. This is why in Napoleon Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich, he says one of the worst things you can do is offer loose opinions to people, because you're giving something that someone else can sink their teeth into that may not be accurate, right? And if you're a leader, or you're in business, or you're in sales, and you're telling people all the time just something because you don't know what to say that's an opinion, you're hurting your business, you're hurting yourself, and you could be hurting that person's future in their life, because they could get emotionally involved in the thought that you're telling them that may actually have no reality, that can cause them to make decisions in their life today that may make a wrong decision that actually causes wrong problems or real problems in the future, which is how people self-manifest the negative things they fear, right? So I hope that kind of helps you guys understand like the power of a thought. Now, here's like how you would get past like understanding fear. Okay. Now, the thing that kills fear is data and math and stats and statistics and history. So whenever we're fearful of something, the reason why is because of ignorance. We don't have enough information on what we're talking about or doing. So if you're fearful to put yourself on camera, it's because you don't feel like you have enough information to do it correctly. If you're fearful to start a business, it's because you don't think you have all the skill sets needed. So what do? You go out there and study for years, and you become a professional student instead of just starting the business, right? So when we have fear, we need data. And here's an example of how this would work. Imagine Kobe and I are, at the lake, and we're on the cliff. This is an example I give. And I'm looking down over the cliff, and I can see the water. It could be 1 foot tall or 1 foot below the bottom. There could be rocks, sharks, anything down there of danger. But it could be 100 foot deep of crystal clear water. I just can't see it. And it could be fun to jump off. Now, the fear is created because of the unknowing, the ignorance, right? We don't know what's underneath the water. You can translate this to any example, right? Now, what happens is, let's assume a bunch of people start coming out of the trees and start jumping in and doing backflips and landing down there. And they're jumping all around. You can see clearly there's no problem. And they've been like, this is a complete jump off spot for 1,000 years. There's no rocks. It's 5,000 feet deep. It's completely safe, right? So what happens is the information through studying, knowledge gaining, wisdom, and data, we see that everybody else jumped in front of us. There's no risk anymore. So now we have a faith high enough that if I jump off, I can jump in and have a good time and not crush myself on a bunch of rocks beneath, right? But it's an analogy explaining how fear, thoughts that we're emotionally involved in that don't have reality in the real world, are keeping us from jumping, meaning there's nothing below except there is something in our mind, which is a locking point, which is a emotional attachment to a fearful thought that's not real, if that makes sense. And the way that you get past procrastination and fear is you study. You gain knowledge on the things that you're doing. You find mentors. You consume information on this, right? So if you're scared to talk to people in sales, aggressively study communication, conversation control, influence, right? If you're scared to, get on YouTube, why don't you go watch video marketing classes, body language classes, how to make yourself look better on camera, anything that you can gain as far as knowledge to get you past that fear. But that's kind of a long way of going through this here, but hopefully you now understand that your thoughts control your future. And if you don't control your thoughts, your future is you're going to show up at an uncontrolled or undesigned future. And I don't know about you guys, my undesigned future led me to almost, living at home, what we're talking about, led me to a very bad spot, right? So I said, I don't want to have an undesigned future, which is chaos, which is meaning I have no control. I want to design my future. And that's when I understood that I can by the thoughts I create today, which is goal setting and staying on those thoughts. Because now when I think about what I want, I focus on it. And then when I focus on what I want, I move towards it. And when fear comes up in parts of the business that I'm now operating in, I'm aware of it. And so I say, okay, well, now I'm fearful of this, that's not going to work out. What information do I need to go gain as far as knowledge to get past this fear to take action on this topic? And over time, you do this in and out process with the business that you're building. And then you're not going to have these limitations because you're going to start doing the things that you're fearful of enough through repetition that it becomes ingrained in you and it becomes a habit. And now it's no big deal. You have all these skill sets in business. And after a 2, 3, 5 year run, now you're a successful entrepreneur. Now I made it seem simple in a long run up, but ultimately, I hope you picked out from that how your thoughts can change your emotional state in your body, whether the thought is real or real in the real world or not, and how your emotional state in your body changes your attitude. And your attitude is everything in life because it dictates the people that'll stay in your life. And in a business, especially in a team building business like we do, if you don't have the right attitude, people don't want to be around you. And so it's kind of a long way to get into it, but hopefully that helped for you guys.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely helpful, and I love that you shared the example of what's real versus what we think is, what we think is real or not. Because I mean, I'm currently reading, and this is a book you recommended on the second time, Psycho-Cybernetics. And
Hmm.
then, what they talk about, or what Dr. Maltz talked about is, our nervous system can't tell, between a real event and then something we vividly imagine. So like the
Right.
physical response that you were just mentioning, you were just referring to, it's not necessarily decided by what's around us. We can actually control it just by our thoughts. So I think that's very important going into potential recession, potential market shift, how we control our own thoughts versus letting the world control us and control the results that we have, right?
100%. And that's a great book. Everybody should read it. Now, like, here's like for like another good understanding of this, guys, right? So like, if your thought that you're telling yourself is, I don't believe that I'm going to be successful at what I'm doing, or maybe maybe I'm not smart enough. I hear this all the time. I'm going to just use an analogy right here. Intelligence is not what builds a business, guys. Some of my friends, and they'll laugh about it, are probably couldn't spell cat, but they're multimillionaires. And I have other people that could spell every letter, every word in the dictionary, and they're broke, right? So that's the first thing is intelligence doesn't have anything to do with success. Persistency, patience, consistency, there's other skill sets that do. Now, the problem is many times people get caught up in like, I may not be smart enough, or I didn't have the right education, or I didn't have the right upbringing, right? This is where if you get emotionally, or if you start to believe these thoughts that, hey, I didn't have the right parents, or I grew up in the wrong part of the country, or I look a certain way, or, my parents believe a certain way. These are those limiting beliefs. These are those wrong thoughts that you're being emotionally involved in, because once you start to believe that you're not going to be able to become successful, what do? You just trash your goals and dreams that Kobe and I were talking about when you were a little kid, because while you're a little kid, nobody's taken these out of your life yet, because you still believe you can be anything you can, and you can. But as life goes through and as life goes on, experiences happen, and you start to see aunts and uncles and family members around you that gave up on their goals and dreams, who are putting nasty negative thoughts in your mind because they gave up on theirs. They want you to give up on yours too, because if you achieve yours, you'll make them feel bad about them not achieving theirs, right? So there's all sorts of different things that happen, that if you're getting caught up into these belief systems and the things are not real, you will adjust your strategy in life and the things that you do as if they are. So the first thing is, like, intelligence has nothing to do with success. But if you think that your education or your background is going to limit you from being successful, you'll stop chasing and being successful, because you don't think you're going to be good enough to compete against the competition. But if the different thought processes that you get involved in, that you believe is, me today is not strong enough to lift the weight, so how do I lift a heavier weight tomorrow? I go to the gym and I push against resistance. I do enough repetitions, and I do it over enough time until I'm strong enough to lift the weight that I want. What you need to have is that mentality with your mindset and your belief system on who you are as a person. You're not strong enough to be successful today. You will be tomorrow if you do the things that everybody else has done before you. So don't go to the gym for your body, go to the gym for your mind and your belief systems and your thinking, and you're going to have the same results as a bodybuilder with their body, but with your mind, right? So that's the first thing. Now, another example here, I just really impressing upon you guys. So this is how problems can happen in life, with your relationships and in person, or in your business. So there was a moment where I had somebody that I thought had taken something from me. So it's actually happened multiple times in my life, where I've had this numerous times where I thought something had been taken from me. Someone close to me had stolen something from me, and I almost went off on them and accused them of stealing something, and just caused this horrible situation, right? Because my belief was, how dare they do this to me after I've done so much for them, right? So I emotionally involved myself in anger and frustration. But the truth was, they had not taken anything from me. I was an idiot and misplaced what I thought they had taken. 100% my mistake on my side, right? And I didn't know that at the time. Could you imagine if I had been emotionally involved in a thought that was not accurate, and I went off and accused someone that I cared about of doing this, and they had not, and it created this big old problem, right? So once you think about right now, the problems that you're having in your personal life and your business life, are they real, or are they constructed based off unreal thoughts? Because most of the time when things happen that we really deal with relationship issues, problems and fights and things like that, they're coming from misunderstandings and a lot of times inaccurate thinking, right? So that just shows you how powerful your thoughts are. If you believe something that's not real, your emotions will rise, the anger and frustration, and you'll act off that. That's why I talk about in some of my old videos, like the death email. So if you guys are, or the death call, right? What is that? It's when you get super pissed off at like a title company or another agent or another person in this industry, and you write this long ranting email, and you're doing your best job to put them in their place, right? Sticking it to them. It feels great to write it, so go ahead and write it, just don't send it. And if you want to send it, sleep on it. Go to sleep, wake up, read it when your emotional mind is logical now, where you're not operating just out of these emotions. And if you still want to send it at that moment or still make that call or text, then do it after you slept on it. But don't do it in the heat of your emotional rise. It's because I've seen too many long-term relationships broken or hurt by the inability for someone to not control short-term emotions, if that makes sense. Don't ever let your short-term emotions ruin a long-term relationship. It makes no sense, right? And that's coming down to incorrect thinking. And so those are some more examples, hopefully, that you guys realize. And so start thinking, are you doing some of these things in your life? Because what we believe is real, we're going to act on it. So if you believe you can build a successful business, you'll act on it and do the things that they'll take to build that business. But if it gets tough and you start doubting yourself and you start reinforcing those negative beliefs of yourself, maybe I don't have what it takes. Maybe I don't have the right upbringing, or I don't have the right education, or I don't have enough money, or I don't have enough resources. When you say those thoughts to your mind, if you believe them, you'll feel it in your body. And if you feel like you're not going to hit your goals, how do you feel? Not good. You feel burnt out. You feel stressed out, right? So start thinking on what you want and never let it go. And don't let anybody else around you tell you your goals or your dreams. You stay focused on what you want. And over time, your mind is uniquely created to go out there and figure out how to put the pieces of the world together to have that happen for you. But hopefully it does help more people understand more examples of, actually how your thoughts do change your future. It's not just like this positive thinking, hey, let's be this weird, positive thinking people like I get from people out there. It's like, okay, well, I'll think positively and think about the things I want. You can think, hey, the negatively and things that you don't want, and see if the results happen. How do you feel in your body? Probably not the way I feel in mine, because the thoughts that I believe, right? And so it is important that it's not just, I have this mind and my brain up here and it's just there to try to tell me how to, what TV show I want to watch tomorrow, where I want. Your mind is your brain is an electronical switching station that controls the infinite energy source that comes in through your mind, right? And then we take that information through our conscious mind, which Kobe's talking about, and it's transitioned down and forced through our unconscious mind, which is our emotional mind. That's what we're talking about here. It has no relationship to what's real or not. It's just looking at that information right there on the surface, right? So you could tell yourself I'm a millionaire and believe it, even though you have no money in your bank account, and your unconscious mind is going to act as if you were actually, a millionaire, right? That's where people start talking about faking it till you make it, living in the mindset of success, feeling it, touching the leather, right? Going to a car dealership and sitting in the car that you want, experiencing it, because once you can see yourself in something, you can create it. So you can't create anything you can't see. This wolf logo on the wall behind me could not have come without a thought first. I couldn't have put, I couldn't go to a restaurant tonight, wherever I'm going, unless the thought comes first. So I don't know where I'm going to go eat. I know I need to go eat. But when I say I'm going to go eat at like Olive Garden or Taco Bell, I don't even know why I gave those. I don't really eat either of those. But the point is, I can't go somewhere without a thought first. I can't paint a painting without a thought first. So if I look at the Mona Lisa or a famous painting, did it just show up on a piece of paper, right? No, it was thought in the mind first, visually seen, and then created. That's how everything happens in the world first. Thought, visualization, emotional involvement, action in the physical body, moving around the physical plane, meaning making the sales calls, showing up, doing podcasts and things like this. So I'm gonna pound it in for you guys there, but now hopefully you realize some the reasons why. So if you're ever going to coach people or train people, don't just make statements, qualify those statements with a why validation, meaning that's why. It's not just think correctly, it's here's why you need to think correctly, because if you believe something that's not real, you can cause yourself to emotionally change your state, which can cause depression, anxiety, frustration, suicide even, which is what happened to me. All the things that caused me to be in that moment of life were not real, yet it drove me to that point, right? So it really is that important. Once you get that under control and you start having this, you move towards a point in life where you think this way going forward. And that's when all the manifestation and you hear the law of attraction and the things that you've wanted forever start coming to you, because the attitude that you bring to the world is attracting the people with similar attitudes to you that have the same goals to do something big in life. And that's when you hear people got rid of their old friends and have new friends, right? And this is when all this transition is happening. So it all starts with studying how to think correctly. So go read Think and Grow Rich and go down that process, because once you understand how to think correctly, all the secondary skill sets in business come in behind that. So this is the center root of everything: thinking correctly and self-esteem building activities. Okay.
Yep, definitely. And we're glad you're here, Connor. I don't think this is kind of like the first time I've heard you tell the story of the depression. You're the amount of depression, the seriousness of it. So I mean, I'm really glad that you're here. So I want to give you a big thanks. Just me personally, all the agents on our team as well for that you've overcome that, because without you doing that, none of us would be, none of us would be here. And, you know, being your partner has been life changing for me personally, I can say. So just wanted to take a moment and just say that and say thank you. But kind of,
Thank you. I do
yeah,
appreciate it. And
yeah,
before we go on,
yeah,
think about how many lives you would change if you're at that moment. Because somebody watching this right now is, I guarantee you, because statistically, I know the stats now. And I've been more open with this, telling my story about this, because the state of the world that we're in. And I've seen a lot of people struggle here. And my fear is that people are going to get emotionally involved like I did and feel there's no hope and there's no future for them. And once you get into that point, it can lead to that, right? So the point is, if you're listening to this, you're thinking incorrectly. The thoughts that you have about yourself in the future is not real. And so you just have to be patient, but you can't just get out of the problems that you have without taking action or moving. You have to move in some direction. So the first thing I do if I'm in this spot, this is what I tell people: if you're really beat up emotionally right now, and I know a lot of you guys are in the world, the first thing is you need to get progress in some area of your life. Start moving your physical body. So the easiest and fastest way to see progress is on your body. It's harder to see it in your mind, even though it's happening at the same rate. But if you're out of shape and you start working out again, what happens is you start to see your face change. You start to build self-esteem. You see a better reflection of yourself. You start to believe in yourself more. You start to feel lighter. You start to feel better. You start to have more energy, right? And that progression leads you to happiness. It's when we regress and stagnate and go backwards that we're frustrated anxiety. So progression in one part of your life leads to progression in all areas of your life. You probably noticed this before. So now that you're feeling better and looking better, now it may be easier to get on camera, right? And do these types of things. So the first thing is find some progression, but start moving your physical body, because your mind affects your body and your body affects your mind. So if your mind's not well, what do you think you're going to do with your body? You're not going to do the right things. You're going to overeat. You're going to do drugs. You're going to drink. You're going to sleep in. You're going to do the things that we do when we're depressed. Now, if your body's not doing well, meaning you have chronic pain or you're out of shape and you're overweight, what does that do to your mindset? You start having bad reflective thoughts about yourself, and it kills your self-esteem. So they both impact each other. So first thing is start moving your physical body. The second thing I tell people is go through a forgiveness exercise. And I did this, and it's like that movie, I think it's Billy Madison. I may show my age here a little bit, but at the end, he's got that, that guy that was like, comes in and he shoots that guy in the butt on stage, the wrestler guy, and that's kind of weird. But basically what happened was he goes through a point where I did this in my life, not because of the movie, but just in general, where I went on a forgiveness resetting system, because I did a lot of things I was regretting in my younger life, which we all do. So just so you understand, you're not perfect. We're all not perfect, and it's okay to make mistakes, but don't hold them over yourself. So the first thing is I went back as far as I could to anybody I could remember that I could find a thought in my mind that I still held in my mind, that I felt that I'd wronged somebody, even if it was back to grade school. Like I went back all the way to like childhood days where I'm like, if I can still remember something that I regret, it's still weighing on my shoulders. It's like I'm carrying this squat bench bar over me with all these weights on it that I can barely hold. And as I went to these individuals and started asking for forgiveness and saying, hey, this probably doesn't mean anything to you, and I know 20 years ago I did this, I'm sorry, and I hope this helps. And you'd be surprised what that does for those people. So first thing is I asked for forgiveness for anybody that I could remember doing anything wrong, because I realized if I could still consciously pull it up, I still had that weight on my bench. So I got to clear that off. Second thing was I basically unconditionally forgave anybody that had wronged me. I had people, ex-partners that owed me money. I had people that had done some pretty nasty things to me. And I said, you know what? If I'm asking for forgiveness, I should give it as well. And I'm not going to ever let anybody, sit, because it's just, you don't want to hold that energy either, right? So I forgave anybody, whether they thought they needed it or not. I said, hey, look, we're good. I forgive you. And I meant it, right? And the last thing, the most important thing is I went on forgiveness for myself. And I said, look, you messed up. It's okay. You can change your life going forward, but you need to let these things get off your back here. You messed up. You didn't know what you're doing at the time. That's why you messed up. You now know what you're doing. So you can't regret doing things that you didn't really know what you were doing at the time, right? So I went through this forgiveness exercise. It took a lot of pressure out of my life, and it gave me the ability to see clearer, think about like muddy water versus clear water, to now see a path to move forward. And the last thing was I focused on gratitude heavily. And so like at that time, part of the reason why I was so miserable and didn't think I had anything to live for, because I wasn't grateful for the things that I had. I had great parents. I had a great family. I lived in a great country. I had food, and I still had like most people in the world in comparison to me at that moment were way worse off. I mean, think about the way that most people in the world live, right? And so what I had to do was have a gratitude reflective experience where it's like, you're being entitled. You're creating your own misery because you don't have more things and opportunities given to you for no reason. You haven't even actually deserved it. So I just felt like because I was alive, I was so special, things should just come to me. I should just be successful and I don't have to earn it, right? And then I realized, like I should be grateful for things I have now. And if I want to have these things in the future, not be entitled to have them, but earn them and to show that God or show the world or whatever you want to believe that I deserve these. And so I really made an effort to look at the things I was grateful for in my life at the moment. Hey, I still got my hands and toes, fingers and toes, right? I got my arms, I got my physical body, I got a family, right? So if you're struggling, do something that creates progress, right? Do something that's going to, create quick progress that you can build off of. Go on a forgiveness exercise, right? The last one is start with the gratitude. And that's going to give you a good foundational starting point to kind of bounce off of for the new path that you're about to go down. And that's kind of what I did when I was in that moment.
Yeah. And again, like, we're really glad you did. And I think people should be, they should be thinking about these kind of things as well, of like working on yourself first before trying to blame the outside world for what's going on. Like, two things really quickly. Like, we think about like a potential market shift or a potential recession. You think back to 2008 and how, some people have struggled then. And then you look back even further and you look at like the Great Depression, and then people see these like things in the history and they fear it. But like, if you're just looking at the opposite side of that, like what came out of the Great Depression, right? Like some really big businesses, Henry Ford, Disney, they were all birthed out of the Great Depression.
They are brokers. And it is important because why, let's look at, remember, why validations. Don't just look at information, consume it and study it. So why is there so much fear being put in the marketplace right now? Well, what sells? Fear sells, right? If you've ever done YouTube or you've ever done marketing, why is the media 24/7 negative energy and fear? Because that's what people are consumed in, because, oh my gosh, I need to know if a dragon's going to eat me tomorrow. And they're going to tell you every day there's 500 dragons trying to eat you because you keep coming back to make sure the dragon's not going to eat you. And then you find out there's more dragons and you're like, I need to make sure the dragons coming tomorrow aren't going to get me either, right? So the point is, if you want miserable life, consume miserable information. And that's what the media is. These people have no want for you to have a great future. They don't care about you. Find people that will tell you that you're a great person, that you have a great future, and that we expect you to do well in life and encourage you to do so. Instead of people telling you your life's screwed up, the future is ruined for you, and it's all for them to build attention so they can sell stuff, right? So it's not real. It's what they're selling to be real. And they know that you're going to get emotionally involved in it, right? And they're going to be able to control you. When people are divided or people are operating through fear, they can be controlled. When people are united and when people are operating through faith, they cannot be controlled. That's why they try to divide us. And that's why they try to take our self-esteem from us. And that's why they try to give us these wrong messages, right? The truth is, there's going to be more fortunes built in this coming correction than most of us could imagine our lifetime. And it's the belief that that's going to happen for me is why it will happen. The others that have the belief that this is going to take me out, it's going to destroy my business, it's going to be all sorts of problems for me, they're going to emotionally involve themselves in that belief, and then they're going to act towards self-manifestation of that fearful thought, and they're going to actually self-sabotage themselves. That's how it all happens, right? So we saw this with the pandemic. Same external pressure coming in, worldwide external event. How people internally handled it, completely different. Some people said, may or may not be as bad as I thought. I don't know yet, but I don't know the future, so I won't fear it. I'm going to work every day and stay the course. So I'm not going to change anything. In fact, I may ramp things up, right? And then some people emotionally involved in the fear. The world's over. Everything is done. I shouldn't be, like, what's the point anymore? And they took the foot off the pedal. They didn't stay the course, and they had suffering businesses and negative results for it. And think about the people that stayed the course. Most people listening to this right now had their best career years over the past couple of years, for sure. A lot of people, right? Same thing with this correction, guys, with the recession. If your mom pours, I give this example. I got this Kobe from Jim Rohn. He says, if your mother pours strychnine into your coffee, would this still kill you? Yeah, right? Now, if the biggest enemy in your world pours honey or sugar in your coffee, what will it do? Nothing, right? So the point is, it doesn't matter who you're getting the information from. It could be your parents, it could be your wife or your children, the most loved people in your world. But if they're filling you with negativity and they're putting negative thoughts and they're bringing this negative side into you, it still affects you, right? And many of us are trapped in family relationships where we're having strychnine poured in our coffee every day, right? But it also doesn't, and then the other example is, it doesn't matter if the enemy's putting something good in your drink, right? So the point is, it doesn't matter where this negativity is coming from, where this bad thought process is coming from, where the negative information is coming from. Anybody can give it to you, so it can still negatively affect you. Now, the point is, doesn't matter where it's coming from. Now you know that. Now you also know where a lot of it's coming from. The media, all over television, right? This is a direct intent to destroy your future, right? They're trying to do this, whether you believe it or not. So the point is, don't watch it, right? So Kobe, when I was your age, we had my first recession to go through is the 2008, 2011 crash. And I was still in the poker world at that time. And if you had told me in 2007 and 2012 that anything had happened differently in my life, I wouldn't have told you, other than the fact of me losing kind of my career at that moment, which was like not because of like the correction or anything, it was just a regulation issue. But the point is, I didn't listen to the noise around me. I was in the big financial crash, it was supposedly world ending for everybody. It didn't change anything with my life. I mean, those were some of my best years. I was making a ton of money playing poker. And like, I didn't know I was in a recession. The people that watch the news every day, they were miserable because they believed that they were in this life horrible existence, right? So your thoughts are going to create your emotions. So if you don't want to have bad emotions, stop feeding your mind with bad stuff, meaning everything that's coming from these external sources. So guard your mind. Don't let anything be told to you that's negative. Control your mind, feed it with positivity, self-development, reading the right books, the right mentors, and you're going to show up in a different future with a different result in a different environment, meaning the life that you actually want this time. So it is important, guys, going through this. What you believe could happen to you is most likely what will happen to you, is the whole point of this, right?
Yep, exactly. What you focus on grows. This is something that you've said over and over again, just what you focus on grows. And then just to kind of finish off part one here, make sure you guys are tuning in for part two, but just to finish off part one here, you talked about, going into a recession, what we think is what's going to happen to us is what's actually going to happen to us. So, obviously, in a tough market position, you're going in, and then, like you said, we should actually be putting, more effort in, spending more, investing more time, maybe even more money into this, and then gaining opportunity, gaining market share in a place where everybody else might be fearful. So you're actually improving your life. And you actually gave a really good example, or a really good analogy of this. Maybe you can share it, is, in a tough time, pushing it through, why you need to push through. And then afterwards, you're not even going to remember, how it feels like, almost like, when you're sick, right? So like, just for people who are getting ready to go into this, what can you say to them to prepare them mentally, for maybe the toughest time in their life, but they're going to come out of this, better than ever.
Well, hopefully this can come up here. So I'm going to do a video here, if y'all can see this right here. So what this is dictating right here is massive opportunity through market corrections. I know it's kind of confusing. Let me explain it to you. So this circle right here is representing market share decreasing, right? In any industry going into correction. This bottom line is a time horizon, meaning start of the recession or bear market, correction coming out when the market starts growing. So this arrow right here is showing the bottom. So far, there's a historical record of 100% of every single bad market recession we've come back from. 100% of the stock market, 100% in a correction, right? So far, all we can look at is data. 100% is a pretty good track record, right? So the 100% part is when the market bottoms and starts coming back up. So what this graph right here is representing, or the circle here is saying there's this many people competing in an industry, insurance, real estate, whatever it is. Let's say just 1,000 people for easy math purposes. But what this is showing is, as time goes by, the market share, meaning people in the industry, is going to contract. People are going to quit the industry, take their time out of the industry. They're either going to let their licenses go inactive, or they're just going to sit on the couch and they have an active license, but they're not going to do anything, right? So as this market share decreases to this many people, do you think that the opportunities are not still around? So now you have less competition still fighting for these opportunities, because all these people are running away from the fire, you run to it. Now, what happens is eventually you're going to bottom out here. So if you look at the average bear market, since there's been, I think, 14 of them since World War II, they've averaged, most of them last less than 24 months. So if we're tracking from January 1st of this year, we should be back out of this by January 1st, 2024, if you look at historical records, right? So what that means is you have about 18 months to button down, kind of strap it up and go through the storm, patten down the hatches, right? But the people that grit it out and come down this 1.5 to 2 year drop and hit this bottom point, when it comes back up, look at what happens. They're the ones with an operating business in the market. So they have They're not having to set their business back up. They're not having to gain skill sets and go through that. They're already ready to go. So they don't have to time the bottom of the market because they're going to hit it no matter what, because they're always in the game. And then what happens is when the market takes off, they're there day one for the market takeoff. Their systems are already in place. In fact, they're way more skilled than they would ever be because they've been fighting this tougher market for 18 months. And then when the market takes off, this is the millionaire maker wave when mass wealth creation happens, because there's a 1 to 3 year window where those that were still in the industry capture massive market share growing back before all the people that decide to come back in the industry who come from word of mouth, right? Oh, I heard the real estate market's heating back up. And that's what faith, not fear, but faith drives. Oh, I have faith if I go into the real estate industry, I might make a lot of money because I heard you could. Information, data, right? Starting to see how this works. But this is kind of what you need to think about, in the market. You're going to have people leaving their time or industries, whatever industry you're in. Market share is going to shrink. Time will keep going. There will be a transition coming up, and you want to be one of these few people here so that you have the market share to gain when it comes back, if that makes sense. So this is what's coming a lot, or what people should think about how this is going to play out over time. Now, next thing is, this isn't going to last as long as you're thinking, guys. It's not like people are thinking like the next 20 years of their life is ruined. This is going to come in pretty quick. And so what you need to do is stay the course. Don't change anything. If anything, ramp up, right? And so I think it's Grant Cardone's 10X rule he wrote after the crash. I'd have to go back and check. But ultimately, here's the other thing. Why you want to ramp up right now. So if other people are leaving the industry, what does that mean? Let's say there's a bunch of people in a movie theater, bunch of full seats. Now a bunch of people are leaving. That means there's a lot of seats in that room. Those represent opportunities. Those represent people that they had clients with that they're no longer working with, right? So when you run to an opportunity that other people are running away from, you pick up the opportunities that they left behind them, right? Because they're operating out of fear. They don't know what's going to happen. So the other thing is, so you want to go start, aggressively staying the course, but also ramp up your efforts, because let's say that we do see a reduction of 25% in business. Well, how do we increase the loss of income if we need to? Increase our output by 25%, right? So if we're doing this on an incremental basis, if I'm making X amount per hour and I lost 25% of my income and I can make X amount per hour, how do I replace that? I add the extra time in. So this is the time when you ramp up, because when things are ramping down and you're putting the extra time in, many people out of fear, because fear is good in many ways sometimes, creates extra energy and pressure, right? So if I threw Kobe in the ocean versus a swimming pool, and I said, you have to swim as long as you can, he's going to swim for a long time in the pool, but eventually he's going to stop swimming. He's going to climb out. If I threw him in the ocean, he can't climb out. He's going to swim until he either dies or someone comes and picks him up, right? If that makes sense. So does that kind of make sense, guys? Like where your efforts are going to be created by fear or pressure. So if you're fearful that you're going to drown, you're going to keep swimming forever. So like when I was scared, I was in debt and I was going to go bankrupt and all this, that fear motivated me to work at an energy level and longer hours and more consistent hours than I could have ever done where I am now comfortably. It's way harder for you once you're successful to push yourself to work like 100-hour weeks, because you don't need to, right? So going through this, I want you to possibly look at this as an opportunity in your mind to use fear to create extra energy in your body, to not want to face what could happen because of fear, to create extra output to catch these extra opportunities. So ramp up your opportunities. Ramp up your energy, capitalize opportunities that other people are running from, and just understand that, these recessions are opportunities for people that understand how to make money in them. And you're going to hear the noise from all the people that don't, which is the masses, the 95+% of the world, right? And you're going to hear the most noise from people that are sharing the same thought process. This is a danger, when the elite high performance people are like, this is an opportunity, right? So associate the people that think correctly, use the fear of this to increase your workload and your energy level. Your income may or may not even drop, because if I just explained it to you that way, where you can increase your output and just keep your thinking correctly. And as you start to process information from friends and family and partners, take it with a grain of salt, and don't just hear things and act on it emotionally, unless you know it's real or not. If that kind of helps a little bit.
No, that definitely helps. And then like you said, again, like afterwards, you're not even going to remember that feeling, and you're just going to enjoy the fruits of it. So
yeah, that's a good point to bring up. So this is a crazy thing. So like if you've ever been like really, really sick, this is the best analogy I can give for you on this. Like I've been sick like pretty bad. like way worse than COVID. You know, I had COVID and I was like, it was like a little cold, right? I had like multiple times, but I had like some flus and things like where I thought I was going to die. Like literally I thought I was going to die. And it was horrific. And then what happened was 6 months later, really even a few weeks later, if you try to remember how you felt, you can't do it. Why? You can't feel that feeling in your body. You can't remember it. You remember it was bad, but you've already paid the due at the present moment that you paid that price, right? So when we pay the moment in the present, so when you're struggling and frustrated in business and those late nights and you're breaking down and doubting yourself, you're paying the price today that you're not going to have to pay tomorrow. So looking back, like even building, you know, a lot of my business, so for example, building EXP, I don't remember doing a lot of it. You know, like your mind cannot remember everything, right? Because if you were to remember everything, you would be living it, if that makes sense. So if I can remember 24 hours a day of everything I'm doing, wouldn't that be I'm consciously aware 24 hours a day and living what I'm living right now? So you can only remember small fragmented pieces of the past. I enjoy the results of my sacrifices that I paid in the present and the past today, yet I can't remember the pain and the problems and the struggles that I went through. I really don't even remember it. I know I went through all this because there's a window where I worked 1,100 days straight, and that was not to be cool. So I'd go and like put IG clip sound bites. That was because I was terrified and I was going bankrupt, right? Like I was literally swimming every day because I didn't want to drown. I was working every day, right? I can't remember the pain and suffering during that window of time, but I know I did it, and I know, and I couldn't do it again now, just to be honest. And like so, but if that kind of helps, guys, right? Pay the price today because the pain you feel in your body, you won't feel it tomorrow. But the excitement that you'll feel when you become financially free and you have an income stream that, you know, you're residually financially free, you will feel forever. So the price that we pay in the present is limited compared to the feeling that we can enjoy forever that's guaranteed if we build a successful business that leads to a long-term residual income stream. So when you're overwhelmed right now, enjoy it, eat it, fight it, right? Because this is the moment in your life. And that's the other thing. I almost like regret. I don't know if I regret. I almost wish sometimes I've heard Gary Vee actually say this, like he almost wants to go bankrupt just so he can have another test to see if he can do it. Right. So like sometimes I wonder, like, you know, if I reset the clock, right. Or if I want to create a challenge, because once you've, you know, the journey that you look back and all those days of suffering and headache and all that, that's the process of who you become as you. And then once you become successful, you're like, okay, now I am that person. And so when looking back, I enjoyed the journey. So it's almost like I wish I could go back and be in those tough moments again and having that doubt, right? And going through that. So where you are as an entrepreneur right now, it seems like chaos and it's like a curse to you sometimes when you're feeling that. In hindsight later, when you look back, you're going to realize those are the formational moments when you became the person that you are. And you're going to look back at those moments as some of the best moments of your life, even though they're struggle moments, if that makes sense.
Yep, definitely does. And, you know, I think, I mean, just going forward as well, just, you know, making sure that, you know, you push through the storm, you swim like your life depends on it. And then on the other side, it's always going to be, it's going to be a lot better. So we're glad, you know, you survived those flus again. But just to wrap things up here, Connor, people want to reach out to you. They want to learn more about what you do. You know, what are some good ways? I know you have some new things coming out as well. So maybe you want to drop it, maybe not, but like, you know, what are some ways people can reach out to you or just learn more about you before we move on to part 2 here, which I will talk about?
Yeah, I mean, like if you guys are coming to this channel or to this podcast, like if you want to work with us, you know, reach out to Covey. He'll show you how to come like get involved in everything that we're doing. I saw my older, I say old, still active, right? So I got my other YouTube channel, Investor Army. That's going to be an investment channel. Now, what I'm going to be doing starting probably by the time you watch this is I'll have a brand new channel up and going. It's going to be my personal brand. It's just going to be Connor Steinberg. And I'm going to talk a little bit about on that channel, some of the reasons why I had to do this. There's a lot of reasons why I had to make this move, but one of them was I was living myself as like an identity where I kept growing that channel aggressively, and I could have grown it for a long time, but I felt like I was like in a hole where like my goals were above the hole. But the more I had success on that channel, the deeper my hole was digging, if that made sense. Because for example, you know, like I'd run into people at airports and they'd be like Investor Army and like scream at me, like it would be random places around the country. And then they wouldn't even know my name. Think about that. They thought that like all they knew was the brand, right? So I was like, this could be a problem in business. So that was one of like many reasons, which we'll talk about. But you should have a personal branded channels where I believe now after some of the limitations. So you can find me there on Investor Army, on my Instagram, just my name _. And then the new YouTube channel, I'm going to be talking a lot about entrepreneurship. I'm going to go through a lot of this stuff in my journey, and I'm going to start it out in a way that I don't think, I'd hope someone's done this on a channel before, but I don't know if they have, because most people don't think about this, where I'm going to start my entrepreneurship channel in a sequential order process through what's called sequencing, showing you guys the exact process I did as I changed my life, starting from the self-development process, the actual skill sets I did, the order of how I went through this to get my businesses off the ground. So because I did everything in the backwards way. For example, I didn't start studying communications until later. It's one of the most important things in business. I studied that after I learned marketing. And the reason why I realized I did that in the wrong order was I didn't work on my communication ability. So I started marketing and I went almost 100 grand debt because the leads that came in, I didn't have the communication ability to turn them into a contract, if that makes sense. So I'm going to teach people in an order of what skill sets are most important in a way that goes out. And I'm going to start putting a ton of videos on that. But ultimately, just reach out to Kobe on that one. And I had something else I was going to try to think of. Let me see if pops in my mind here in a second. But I know we're wrapping this one up. But if you want to ask me anything else, I'm going to try to think of what I had to say here. There's a point on that. But I'm just going to leave you guys with one last golden nugget.
It's okay. I mean, you can leave it with him on part 2, because we want them to listen to not just 1 hour of Connor. We usually get. Did you think of it right now?
We'll leave it for part 2. No,
we'll leave it for part 2. Okay.
Yeah, I'll leave it for that.
Yeah, we'll leave it for part 2. I mean,
if you want to know, I have it. It's right here, but you're gonna have to watch part 2 to come get that.
So, yeah, there we go. Yeah, you're gonna have to watch part 2.
Yeah,
you're gonna have to watch part 2. But thanks, Connor. Thanks for doing this, and thanks for everything you've done for us, and you continue to do for us. So, like I always say, we get to meet with Connor in a private coaching call every Monday. With our team here, the Wolfpack, and we usually he sets this call for about an hour, but we usually get 2 hours with Connor. So I'm gonna share, I'm gonna do the same for you guys today, and we're gonna get 2 hours of Connor. So make sure you guys tune in for part 2, where we're gonna be talking more about what our team does, how we're positioned to help our agents and in this coming market, and some of the different things that are going to be coming up in the future as well. And if you want to participate and be a part of this, you want to work with me, you want to work with Connor, after you just heard about all these cool things that you've done, we're going to tell you how to do that. But thank you guys for tuning in, and I will see you guys on part 2. Take care.
Have a good day.